Well, at exactly this hour last night, when we began this program with the news that George Anthony DeVolder Santos did not accept an invitation to a White House reception for all new members of Congress in both parties, probably because the White House actually checks IDs and does a background check of every visitor, we now know exactly where Congressman DeVolder Santos was when we were delivering that report, along with the breaking news last night that the person listed as the new treasurer of the Santos campaign released a statement saying that a new campaign finance filing by George Anthony DeVolder Santos was not signed by the person whose electronic signature appears on the document. Republican Thomas Datweiler, who has served as a treasurer on many Republican campaigns, issued a written statement saying that the new campaign finance document bearing his electronic signature is completely wrong. He did not authorize the Santos campaign to use his signature, and he does not vouch for any of the information in that new campaign filing, which changes the description of $700,000 that flowed into the campaign. The campaign's original claim was that that money came from the candidate's personal funds. The new filing simply unchecks the box saying personal funds and does not reveal where the money came from. For 99% of politicians, that news breaking last night would have been the very worst news of their lives as politicians. It would have been the darkest moment of their lives as politicians for 99% of politicians who have never lied about where they went to school or where they worked or randomly thrown someone's electronic signature onto their campaign finance filings, which seems to indicate a possible $700,000 campaign finance crime. Most politicians never come close to a scandal moment that George Anthony DeVolder Santos found himself in at exactly this time, this very minute last night. Most politicians are nowhere to be found when they are in this, when they're this far down the deep hole of scandal and possible crime that has state and federal prosecutors closing in on them. But we know exactly where George Santos was last night, at this very minute, when I was revealing the latest elements of what may be his campaign finance crimes. He was out on the town in Washington, D.C. You would think by now that George Santos might take a certain pleasure in wearing an N95 mask, even if he thinks he's not at risk of COVID-19, but just to make it that much harder to recognize him out there in the world, you would think by now that George Santos might have obtained another pair of glasses so that he wouldn't have to go out there in the world wearing his unmistakable trademark eyeglasses. At this time last night, he was in a place where most people don't look like they just came from the office. Most people are very casually dressed there. But George Anthony DeVolder Santos, proving once again that he desperately craves and pathologically thrives on the attention he is now getting, went to a karaoke bar in Washington, D.C., and he went dressed as George Santos. He went to a place called Hill Country on 7th Street, just off Pennsylvania Avenue, about midway between the Capitol and the White House, steps away, it turns out, from where I used to live in Washington, D.C. It's not the kind of neighborhood you go to and not the kind of place you go to at night in Washington, D.C. if you don't want to be seen. And, of course, he was seen and videoed at exactly 10:10 p.m. last night by an NBC News staffer. And it went like this.
You're not going to try to interview me. Look, I'll tell you this, I'm recording, and I'll say this. I've said when
So, out on the town at night, George Santos does exactly what he does during the day when he's walking down the hallway of the Longworth House Office Building. He revels in the attention of the camera. He refuses to answer questions, and he lies. He just said when he does respond to the press, it's going to be comprehensive. That is a lie. It will not be comprehensive. He will not answer every question that's asked of him, and he might never answer any questions asked of him outside of a courtroom. And as a criminal defendant in this country, You have a right not to testify. And so we may never hear George Santos answer a single question about where he got the $700,000, which as of tonight is now officially listed in his latest campaign finance report as an illegal campaign contribution, because that money did not come from the candidate's personal funds. And that is the only source where an amount that large can come from in a campaign: candidates' personal funds. There are two reasons George Anthony DeVolder Santos is still a member of the House of Representatives. One, Kevin McCarthy is the weakest, most cowardly speaker in the history of the House of Representatives and desperately needs the Santos vote. Two, George Anthony DeVolder Santos needs the money. At this point, there is no evidence whatsoever that George Anthony DeVolder Santos has ever earned more money than the paycheck he is getting right now from the House of Representatives. His salary as a member of Congress is $174,000 a year. We have never seen a Santos tax return. And so we have no idea if he has ever made that much money before in his life. He has never lived like someone making $174,000 a year. He has never had the kind of home that that income could provide for a single individual. When you see politicians like George Santos, not that we've ever seen one exactly like him before, but when you see a politician in this much hopeless trouble with his previous supporters back home demanding that he resign, along with his fellow Republican congressman from New York demanding that he resign, the politicians who don't resign in situations like this all need the money. They all need the paycheck. They all need the income from the job everyone is demanding they resign from. Every day that George Anthony DeVolder Santos remains in the House of Representatives, he double underlines the House Republican Party's relationship to lying. And what he shows is that lying is a comfortable two-way street for House Republicans. Yes, they lie to their voters about the 2020 presidential election. Republicans have always lied to voters about tax cuts for the rich actually somehow magically increasing revenue to the Treasury, when in fact that dramatically cuts the revenue to the Treasury, as it has every time, creating huge deficits and increasing the national debt, as tax cuts have every time. Many of you could spend the next several minutes rattling off lies House Republicans have told without even including the dangerous QAnon madness of Marjorie Taylor Greene and stuff like that. But the less emphasized part of Republican lying is that House Republicans are fully accepting of lies told to them that they know are lies. Most of the House Republicans who voted to overturn the last presidential election knew that everything Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani said about that election was a lie, but they wanted to be lied to. And so George Santos lying to them, in effect, about everything about himself, is something that Republicans in the House accept every day from Donald Trump and other Republicans. But unlike Donald Trump, George Santos has no following in the Republican Party. He doesn't even have a following anymore in his Long Island congressional district. Unlike Donald Trump, Congressman Santos does not in any way represent the thinking of a majority of the Republican Party voters. They feel nothing for George Santos, nothing positive. And so George Santos, who has become the most famous Republican freshman congressman in the history of the House of Representatives, stands there every day in the House of Representatives as the perfect monument to the lies House Republicans tell to their voters and to each other. The House Republican position on the debt ceiling is a lie that they tell only when we have a Democratic president. Here is the House Republican position on the debt ceiling when there is a Republican president.
So when they start talking about using the debt ceiling as a wedge to negotiate for things that they want, they have told me very strongly they would never use that. That's a very, very sacred thing in our country, debt ceiling. We can never play with it. So I would have to assume we're in great shape.